And of course, the latest round of questions sparked by that report tabled 2 weeks ago by the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. That committee sharing their findings and a list of recommendations. To talk about this, we are now reaching out to Ward Elcock, who served as CSIS director for 10 years from 1994 to 2004. Mr. Elcock, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
I want to begin here with really what's happened in regards to the NSICOP report in the last 24 hours, specifically Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader, who, as you know, is calling on all party leaders right now to review the unredacted report together and formulate an action plan to deal with foreign interference. What do you make of that call?
Well, it's more mature than most discussions on national security issues in Parliament. It's a more mature level than most such discussions. I think it makes some sense for the party leaders to have a discussion. It's hard to see how to resolve this issue unless they do. The idea that you can simply release the names of the individuals involved, or anybody can release the names of the individuals involved, is pretty ridiculous. It wouldn't be in accord with the normal way in which we proceed. You simply don't release information about people without them having an opportunity to respond to that information, and in the circumstances, they really wouldn't. It's not clear that anybody has committed criminal offenses. It's not clear that anybody could be prosecuted. So it would be a little unfair to simply release names. They need to have, I think, a discussion amongst party leaders and see if they can find a way forward that would allow this issue to be dealt with. But I think that the fact that the Commission will now look at the information may help a bit. But short of the party leaders having a mature discussion, it's hard to see how it gets resolved, because it's not clear that the Commission will be able to entirely resolve it either.
Well, that's something, of course, we'll be watching. Ms. May, of course, saying that she's writing to the other party leaders. But, you know, when you turn to the report itself, Mr. Elcock, the government is criticized by NSICOP for being too slow to act, for knowing as far back as 2018 that the plans in place to protect Canadian democracy were insufficient. Last week, Bill C-70 passed third reading in the House. Do you think that bill, which does aim to counter foreign interference, addresses the concerns raised by NSICOP?
I think the bill addresses some issues, and I know that NSICOP has said that the bill does in fact respond to a number of their concerns. The bill is, however, not a silver bullet. It will not solve the issues around foreign interference entirely. It will provide some useful tools, and it will make clear to people, or clearer to people, that foreign interference is a problem, and perhaps give people a clearer idea ultimately of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. But having said that, it won't entirely solve the issues of foreign interference. And to be blunt, foreign interference is not new. It's been around for a long time, and while there are some issues affecting Canadian democracy, I don't really think. I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to suggest that that foreign interference is threatening Canadian democracy at this point in time. But there are some things that need to be dealt with. But I think one can over gild the lily a little if one thinks that this is a really major attack on Canadian democracy.
So what do you see this as then? Primarily a criticism of how this government has dealt with the issue?
Well, I think it is inevitably a criticism of how this government has dealt with it. But I would say that you could say the same thing of many other governments. It's not so long ago that there have been other issues of foreign interference and other incidents of foreign interference in Canada. Some of them serious, some of them less serious. The problem with foreign interference and the kind particularly that has got people exercised at this point is that unless you know the facts, it's not actually clear that there has been anything that violates the criminal law or that you could prosecute anybody in respect of any of the activities that have gone on. We simply don't know all the details. So everybody is building castles in the air, frankly.
Building castles in the air, although we have heard from diaspora groups who have expressed their concerns and given testimony of being harassed by foreign actors. That
is another issue, and that is not one of the issues that this bill or the current discussion really will deal with at all. That is an issue that has been there for a long time, and successive governments have done little about those issues, frankly. But those issues are also hard to do things about. How do you deal with, say, the Iranian government, which does much of what it does by sort of remote control through telephone calls and so on, rather than putting people on the ground necessarily and there being somebody that you can take action against, or harassing people's families in Iran. Those are things that you can't do very much about, difficult as they are for many Canadians of foreign origins.
Mm-hmm. So, when you look at the findings and the conclusions, though, that were made by the committee, by NSICOP, there seems to be a bit of a challenge of a corporate culture here. Different departments reacting at different times to different concerns, ministers not seeking clarity on issues of security. I take what you say, that Bill C-70 is not a silver bullet, but up against this type of culture as to how the bureaucracy and how governments deal with intelligence concerns, what would you say is the missing piece? What actually needs to be addressed here?
Well, I think we're mixing subjects here. The reality is that there are differences in culture. There is, for example, a clear difference in one of the particular instances that is being described, where I think foreign affairs and senior foreign affairs officer, who was then acting as the NSIA, disagreed with the service about what or was not acceptable diplomatic activities. Those things happen, and they are inevitable, and they are part of the reality of foreign interference. I think the real issue extant here is not really differences in corporate culture so much. Those things exist, and you have to deal with them. But I think the real issue is there really isn't a culture of national security in this country. And there's very little understanding of national security issues or how to handle them. And that's true pretty much across the board, whether one is talking about the public service or ministers or members of parliament or even, frankly, Canadians. For many years, we've been able to avoid discussions on national security. And unfortunately, you pay a price when you don't have experience of national security issues. I think that's really the issue that is the problem behind some of the issues that have surfaced throughout this debate in the last X number of months since the first leak started a while back.
Well, certainly something to consider when we look at these stories. Ward Elcock, thank you for this. Appreciate the insight.
Oh, pleasure.